What is up, guys? Welcome to episode number 168 of Beef's Beef. And I have a doozy of an interview for you guys today. But before that, we always got to shout out our sponsors. Our first sponsor, Crystal Lackey at Stockton Mortgage. Hit Crystal up for any home loan needs, any mortgage needs, anything that has to do with the home buying process or anything like that. Hit up my friend Crystal. You can get in touch with her at 502-615-0743. Again, it's Crystal Lackey at Stockton Mortgage, 502-615-0743. Stockton Mortgage is an equal housing lender, MLS number 8259. Crystal Lackey, MLS number 1735979. My other sponsor, Dellium Clothing. Dellium, it's spelled Bdelliom. You guys will know him even more now if you ordered a shirt from me, because he is the one that is making the Beef's Beef t-shirts. Love this guy. Cannot wait to get the t-shirts, because I think you guys are going to be very surprised at everything, and or not very surprised, but you're going to be very happy with the quality of all the t-shirts. Dellium is men's and women's minimalistic brand that focuses on modern aesthetic and quality. Everything comes pre-shrunk, so you don't have to worry about anything shrinking in the dryer or anything like that. You can find Dellium Clothing on Facebook and on Instagram at Dellium Clothing. You can find his men's line in Him's Gentleman Boutique in downtown Louisville, or downtown New Albany, not downtown Louisville, downtown New Albany. Also, I just cut off the orders for the first batch of t-shirts here. I'll probably do some more once you guys see them, and once we see them and more people want to order them. If you want to get a t-shirt in the future, I'll put it back out. Hit me up through DM, or if you have my number, text me. Whatever, but we'll get with you. Dellium Clothing. My buddy Isaac hit him up for all that stuff. Today's interview is a fantastic one if you're a Louisville fan, and it's a fantastic one if you're a basketball junkie like myself. So for me, this is a dream interview because this locks in both of those. Today, I have an assistant coach for my favorite team. I mean, you could probably guess by some of this stuff behind me on who my favorite team might be. Maybe the Louisville Cardinals. So without further ado, assistant coach for the University of Louisville Cardinals, Mr. Ross McMains. So I'm here with Coach, man. I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, I mean, we'll just hop right into the questions, because I have a lot of stuff that, I have to ask you that I want to kind of get to know you about. So you were born in New Hampshire, but you grew up in New Zealand. At what age did your family move to New Zealand?
I moved there when I was about 3-4 years old. My mom's from New Zealand, so that was our connection there. So I was born dual citizen, US and New Zealand. And yeah, we just made the shift over there.
What part of New Zealand did you live in?
So Auckland City is the biggest city in New Zealand, about 1.5 million. And I lived on an island called Waiheke Island, about 30 minutes off of Auckland City.
Yeah, so one of the most interesting things that I read whenever I was doing research on you, I'm sure every person that talks to you asks you about this, is that you took a boat to school every day.
Yeah. I used to, like, not like a small boat, like a ferry. But yeah, get up at like 6 a.m, catch the 6:30 ferry over to Auckland, about a 30-40 minute boat ride and stuff, and then land there, either jump in a taxi or a bus and take that to school. And yeah, then same thing back home. Best part was, like, if it was a stormy day, I learned to be able to I got pretty good at guilting my mom into not making me get on the boat in fear of it capsizing or something. So I'm pretty good with that, manipulating.
So you just got to miss school if there was a storm sometimes?
Yeah, so some kids get snow days, but I would get big wave days.
So, like, was that, I guess probably when you're really young, that's probably a really cool thing to do, because you're like, oh, we get to ride a boat to school. But after a while, I'm sure probably got tedious, didn't it?
And honestly, never, because you learn to get work done. I mean, it became where got homework done, or became where there were other kids who were commuting to school also, so we'd have a little group and hang out and have a good time. Like, as I got older, by older I'm just saying, like, from like 8 to 10, 11 years old, I started doing it on my own without my parents. And at that point, I felt like, okay, now grown up. I'm an adult. And so I go grab the sports page from the newspaper and go get like a donut and a juice box from the little shop on the boat and go sit with the businessmen at the table while they're I felt real official doing that. So no, I liked it. It was fun. Made me feel independent.
So would you say that time there, like reading the sports page and stuff, kind of like sparks your interest in the game of basketball?
It was already sparked. It's from like 5. I started. My dad got me in a hoop. So my dad actually went to University of North Carolina, and so obviously he was super into hoop because of that. Growing up, he from Louisiana, Baton Rouge. So grew up kind of LSU fan, and then North Carolina and stuff. So it was always around me. He always talked about it. He got me. It was the first sport he got me playing, and the last sport I ever played. Really. So it's pretty much been basketball since then. From about 6 years old, it's been waking up, checking NBA.com every single morning, reading every stat, reading every result for as long as I've known, up until I started coaching.
So did you have a team when you lived in New Zealand, or was it just like, I love the entire NBA and it was kind of a way for you to get away with having or being a fan of every team because, hey, I don't have a team around here?
Man, I was a fan of all, like I followed all things basketball. So like I was like I had different stages of teams that I followed in the NBA, but I think I started off an Orlando Magic fan because of Penny Hardaway, and then ended up gravitating towards being a Utah Jazz fan with Karl Malone. I was always on the wrong side of them taking L's to the Bulls. Growing up, there was some tears shed because of that. And then, I mean, I was a WNBA fan. I was a Shaviko Holtzclaw and the Washington Mystics. I was a EuroLeague fan with Panathinaikos. I just ate it up. So, yeah.
So when you were 11, you guys moved back to the States and you guys moved to Santa Barbara, correct?
Yeah.
What was the decision, or what went into that decision to move to Santa Barbara?
A mix of things. I don't actually know the whole story, but I mean, again, we kind of had lived a life back and forth between the two places. My mom, even though she was from New Zealand, she spent about 20 years of her life in San Francisco. So she had ties to California in general, and we've done a couple trips there. And then just with my growing passion for basketball, as much as it was growing in New Zealand, I think at the time, my passion almost outgrew just like what I needed to fix, to get my basketball fixed daily. So I think that was part of it too, and being able to move to the US for that.
So you were actually in favor of the move to the US then?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, not that you would have a choice anyway, because you're 11 years old, but I mean, I'm sure they would still take your feelings in account at least some point.
Yeah, I had friends and any amount of people that I was sad to leave in New Zealand and stuff, and naturally, but we kind of been traveling so much year to year. It was just a new adventure for me. I was excited.
So you went to Santa Barbara High School, correct? Did you play any basketball there?
Yeah. Played high school at Santa Barbara High. I played basketball at Santa Barbara High. I did 2 years at a school called Santa Barbara Middle School, and then 3 years at Santa Barbara High. So,
did you get any offers coming out of high school, or was it, that was the end of your career?
No, I played. Well, I went back. I did the year after high school. I did a year back in New Zealand. Did a coaching internship with the New Zealand Breakers. I played another year of high school back in New Zealand with one of my childhood friends that I grew up with. And then after that, I came back to the U.S. and actually played JUCO, junior college basketball at Santa Monica College. Nice. So I did 1 year of that before stopping playing, kind of being full-time with coaching from there on out.
So were you ever interested in playing any other sports when you were growing up? I'm guessing what sport's big in New Zealand?
Rugby's big. Cricket's pretty big. I loved rugby to watch it, but I wasn't fooling myself thinking that I was going to be able to survive out on the rugby field. Cricket, I wasn't a big fan of. So it was pretty much basketball. I like soccer. I played soccer till I was about 12. That's about it.
Do you get out to the games here at all?
I haven't. I want to. I've heard they're really fun.
So like seeing that you played and you were into the game of basketball from the time you were 5 years old. I mean, I know even when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I want to play in the NBA. I want to be Michael Jordan. Like, that's what I want to be when I was a kid. But like, once you get a certain age, you realize, okay, I'm not as physically gifted as some people. I may love the game, but the game's not for me. At what age did you get that hint for yourself and say, okay, I want to get into coaching, or coaching's what I want to do in the future?
Yeah, I don't know if I had the self-awareness yet at 11 when I got into coaching to say like, my playing career is tailing off and stuff. I think I still was still dreaming and fully invested in wanting to go as far as I could as a player. But I was just, with how passionate I was about the game of basketball, it was another aspect of the game that I was excited to explore. So around 11 years old, I want to say, I was in like a Borders in New Zealand, a Borders bookstore, and I'd always go to the sports section and just like, I always would read like basketball player biographies when I was a kid. But then one day I just came across this like book called like the X's and O's Tactics of the Game or something. And I remember opening it up being just like, what the heck is this language in here? I want to learn it. And so got it, took it home with me and just started, loved it. And then started researching on the internet. And next thing you know, I'm 12 years old coaching 10-year-olds and then 13 coaching 11-year-olds. And I just kind of started always coaching 2 years down or a year down from wherever I was at. And then through high school in the US, I'd always kind of travel up and down the state of California, going to different coaching clinics and stuff, which was always fun. People were always thinking that I was like one of the kids that was supposed to be like in the clinic being used for the drills.
Yeah.
And no, I'm here attending. I got my notebook. It was cool.
So did you ever have trouble getting through to some of the kids that you were coaching because you were so close to them in age?
Yeah, sometimes. There was one in high school. I think I was like a junior coaching the freshman team, and there was like a little pushback, maybe once or twice. But I think I learned pretty early on. Not like, obviously, I can't just like sit up on my soapbox and yell and scream and expect that they're going to listen to me and stuff. Like maybe I'd watch other coaches on TV do. So I kind of had to adjust and adapt and find different ways to connect with people at a pretty young age. And then, I had some coaches that were much older than me that were my coaches that respected me enough to have my back when certain situations popped up like that.
That's always great to have. So you mentioned you went back and you worked with the New Zealand Breakers. What exactly was your position when you moved back there?
I basically created a position as a coaching intern for them. So they had interns before, just in the office doing any amount of things, and kind of asked about that and just said, but this is kind of this is the experience of what I've done, and kind of said a little portfolio of different coaching things I've done through high school and different notes and stuff from clinics I'd taken. And I'd love to help with scouting, love to help with workouts and be involved and be in the coaches meetings. And they kind of rolled with it. So it was great. I mean, it was an awesome experience right off the bat, and like awesome coaches to be around. I had a coach named Andre Lamanis, who just stepped down as the head coach of basketball of the Australian national team. A coach named Dean Vickerman, who I worked for in Melbourne United, who just won the championship in the Australian League. And then a coach named Judd Flavel, who's an assistant coach in the Australian League, another really great coach and stuff. And then it was like a veteran playing group. Wayne Ellington. Sorry, Wayne Turner, not Wayne Ellington, Wayne Turner.
I had Wayne Turner on my podcast not long ago.
Yeah, so Burner was on the team my first year as an intern, which was great, cool. Yeah, so it was a good team, awesome experience. I learned so much.
So when you were doing that, you said it's an internship. Did you have another job outside of that, or was it a paid internship?
No, I was just doing that. I was still in high school, fortunate to have. Obviously, I was at home. I wasn't like living away in some foreign area and stuff. So I was fortunate to be taken care of and be lucky to have that, really privileged in that regard.
So you mentioned after that you went back to the States and you went back to Santa Monica Junior College. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So, and then a little bit after you went back to LA and you started doing player training.
Yeah. So even in my year in Santa Monica, I kind of like finished up my year with the Breakers and stepping back into things in the US. So I'd been able to like attend the New Zealand national team training camp and stuff, and had picked up a couple of their like a nice like zip up shirt from them and everything. So when I came back to the US, I kind of was of the mindset of like, all right, how am I actually going to break into this coaching thing? Right? Nobody's just going to listen to me for the sake of listening to me of different X's and O's tactics, things that I want to talk about. So I've really got to kind of get my foot in the door through the player development side. So that's where I really started researching that side of the game even more so. And so started off just like working out with guys on my own team. I was kind of able to establish myself as a leader, not so much on the court, but off the court, just in like kind of how I led in practices, how I led just in general in team talks and stuff. And they respected how I worked and stuff. So I'd work out a lot of the players on my own team. We'd have practice and then we kind of go to another gym. I'd run kind of individual workouts for a bunch of them. And then after that first year of playing, I stopped playing and kind of went into that full time. So started training our guys in addition to a couple other guys from UCLA and USC from around town that I'd gotten to know, and they'd come through regularly throughout the week. And then from there, through a kind of mutual connection, got connected with BDA Sports, one of the biggest agencies in the NBA. And so they kind of came through, saw one of my workouts, liked it, had a player named DJ Strawberry.
Oh, yeah, from Maryland.
Yeah, DJ. So
he'd
been hurt, and I think he was a free agent at the time and was trying to kind of build back to getting into the NBA and stuff. So it was like middle of the season in like December. They asked me to start working with him. So that was the first NBA guy that I got to start working with. And then it kind of just grew from there, where they just started kind of sending one player after the next.
I remember DJ Strawberry from watching him play against LeBron on ESPN. That was where I remember him from. Also, with his dad as well. So what other NBA guys did you work with when you were doing some player development stuff?
A long list. I mean, early days, gosh, DJ Strawberry, they were like guys, like some NBA, some international, some college guys. Let's see, early on days was like DJ Strawberry, Charles Rhodes from Mississippi State, Ryan Hollins, Deji Akindele, player from Nigeria, Ike Diogu, Andres Biadrins, then ran the pre-draft for Klay Thompson, Nikola Vucevic, Marcus Johnson. So it kind of picked up quick and started working with a bunch of guys. That was in the first few years. Yeah.
At any point was it kind of overwhelming because you're like, man, not only did I jump into this, but like I kind of jumped into this, all the way in.
Yeah, it's funny. I never really the part that caught me most. The only time I ever really was starstruck was actually maybe in like 2013, 2014. I returned back to New Zealand. I'd always return back to New Zealand every year, and so once I kind of established myself in player development here, anytime I'd return back, the New Zealand Breakers would bring me in for a month just to work with their guys. So like, outside of my intern role now, more as like coming in and running bits of practice and the player development stuff. And one time I get back there and Andre or Dean, whoever was the head coach at the time, they throw me down one end with a player named Paul Hanare and another player named Dylan Boucher. And they were like probably 35, 34 at the time, but they were like childhood heroes of mine growing up and stuff. And so that was honestly the biggest, most starstruck moment for me, was when they threw me down at that court with Paulie and Dylan. I was like, oh my gosh, I was 8 years old running around, going to their games, getting their signatures as a kid from Waiheke. But not so much with the NBA guys. I don't know. I was just, I think I was really locked in and determined to try to help those guys get better. I didn't get too caught up in the names of who I was working with. And to be honest, like having Klay Thompson and Nikola Vucevic as pre-draft guys, I was still in the early days of like developing my eye for like what a high level NBA player looks like. As a prospect, I could work with guys and develop them, but my like talent evaluation was still kind of growing. And so I was pretty oblivious to like, man, I'm sitting here with a guy who's about to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. So I read also that you did some stuff with the University of Rome. How did that come to fruition? And like, what was that experience like over there?
So I did my 2 years, 1 year playing in Santa Monica College, another year of going to school there. And then I had the option to transfer. I did a bunch of schools, got into a bunch, and then decided I wanted new experience. And so I transferred to a school called John Cabot University in Rome, which is an American university out there. And also through BDA, got connected with Virtus Roma, the pro team out there that was in the EuroLeague at the time. And so got on with them doing some different scouting stuff while I was there. So went out there planning to attend for the rest of my time in school. Had a great time, great experience on the basketball side and just being in Italy, being in Rome and stuff. And then ended up having to leave early to come back for that pre-draft with Klay Thompson and Vucevic.
And then after that pre-draft camp is when you or the pre-draft stuff, that's when you got associated with with Sacramento, I guess.
Yeah, so I did like the lockout happened right after that. That's when the NBA lockout happened. I'd been doing all my training down in LA, LA based, but then I through a connection. So there's a sports performance group called P3 Sports Science that's based in Santa Barbara. I'm biased, but I think as good as it gets in the world in terms of developing players from a sports performance standpoint. And I trained with them through high school. Certainly, I'm not the poster child for them by any means, but developed a great relationship with them and stuff. And so kind of talked with them like, hey, look, I've got these guys that I'm training down in LA and got this connection with BDA. I think this would be a beast of a thing if we could do this together and kind of grow, because they were starting to get some traction with some different NBA teams also. And so during the lockout, I pulled up all my training from LA to Santa Barbara, connected BDA with P3, and kind of things grew from there. So that became home base for about the next year or so. And then from there, I got the Sacramento Kings job. I actually got the Sacramento Kings job because I met Keith Smart in Latvia when I was training Andres Biedrins over there one summer. And we just kind of started to build a relationship. And when he got the job there, he brought me up there with him.
So were you like a full-time assistant, or what exactly did you do?
I was player development. So it was basically player development and a unique version of player development. So I got brought in after I missed training camp. So I've been training Travis Outlaw, one of the Sacramento Kings players, and Travis wanted me to come up just after training camp for a week to work with them. So I went up there and just told Keith, like, hey, I'm going to be in town. I'd love to come by practice and stuff. And Smarty was like, look, come by practice and just be with us for the week and come and work our guys out. And so I went in there for the week. This is maybe just during preseason time that year, and connected with guys really well. And by the end of the week, Smarty kind of said, like, hey, can you stay on with us for the rest of the year? And so from there on, I was the player development guy. I was literally moving my office. They gave me a little office, like cubicle in the office section. I grab the chair, grab the desk, and put it in the gym on the sideline, because I was like, this is what my role is here, to help these guys get better. So I don't want a guy to come through this gym that I don't know about, and I'm not there on the court to help him work and help him get better. And so I didn't travel for the first maybe month and a half with the team, and then after the first month and a half, they started having me travel the rest of the year with the team.
So I guess as far as being a player development coach, do you actually help coach during practice as well? Or are you just pretty much a guy I'm doing one-on-ones after practice? That's when you're pretty much working with me.
Yeah, that depends on the staff and how the coach runs his practices with Smarty. He's smart. Like, he would run a lot of, like, we'd break up into groups a lot of times. And so there were different times where it's going to be like, hey, me and Bobby Jackson are going to be down this end with the guards in the midst of practice, or with this team of 5 guys taking them through this action. So there'd be parts during practice. For the most part, I was in the background during practice, just helping out where I could and different things. And then pre-practice, post-practice, and then especially later in the night, that's where I'd play my big role in terms of just getting guys in for workouts, getting guys in for extra work, extra skill work, extra video stuff. And then eventually, when I started traveling on the road, guys would want to get into the gym in a city, like the night before we played or something. And so I go to the gym with them, kind of get them through a workout to help them prepare them for the next day.
You mentioned Bobby Jackson, those early 2000 Sacramento Kings teams, man, like,
they're a beast.
Yeah, like, that makes me so jealous, because I loved Bobby Jackson, man. I love those teams in Sacramento. Just knowing that you were working with guys with him, he was one of my favorite players on that team. Chris Webber is actually one of my favorite players of all time. I love those early 2000 Sacramento teams.
They're great. They played good basketball. Played really good basketball.
After that, you moved down to the G League affiliate for them, correct? Did you do the same thing with the G League affiliate as well?
Yeah. So the team got sold. It was like I joined the Sacramento Kings, a kid from New Zealand. We come from Waiheke Island that's just loved basketball his whole life. I was thrilled and amazed that I made it to that moment and being in the NBA. And then, as great of an opportunity as it was, then kind of adversity strikes and the business side of the NBA hits. The whole team got sold that year. I mean, the whole year that I was there, that first year was the year that, like, they're going to get sold to Vegas, or they're going to be moved to San Diego, or they're going to get moved to Virginia Beach. It was a different rumor every week. And by the end of the season, the Maloofs sold the team to Vivek Ranadive. Pretty much whole staff got fired, let go. But then I'd obviously developed any amount of relationships with the players while I was there. And so I went back to Santa Barbara, did my normal off-season training that I do with guys back there. And Patrick Patterson, who was one of our players with the Kings, Kentucky Wildcat, I know.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
But he was back in Santa Barbara training with me. And so the new head coach that got hired, Mike Malone, was kind of doing his rounds, coming to see the different players. And he came down and saw the workout. And after the workout, I was like, look, man, I've already hired my staff for the Kings, but I would love to have you back. I would love to have you in this organization if you're willing to be. Can you come and be an assistant coach with our G League team? And so that's where I jumped on with Reno as an assistant coach. And so still did all my player development stuff. That's been a part of me everywhere. But then also was a big part of the tactical side of the game and scouting and any amount of things there.
So you mentioned that you went back to New Zealand every year. I'm guessing at this point you were still doing that, and then you went back there to be an assistant for the national team.
Yeah, I pretty much went. I'd always go back to New Zealand. That's home for me. Waiheke is the place where I kind of get my mind right. Even the Sacramento Kings year it was a crazy season, and it was a new world for me, and any amount of wild stuff that was going on. And so I actually went back to New Zealand for 72 hours during the All-Star break that year.
Oh wow!
Didn't miss a game, didn't miss a practice. But as soon as the All-Star break hit, I got on a flight, went to Waiheke, sat on the beach there for 72 hours, and then went back. I think it's probably the furthest anyone's ever traveled for All-Star break. But so I would always go back. I would always go back once a year and be with the Breakers, see family, be at home. And then in 2015, I want to say, after my 2 years in Reno, I got Paul Hanare, one of the players who played for the Breakers when I was an intern. He got the head coaching job for the national team. And so he asked me to come on as an assistant coach with them. And I've been an assistant coach of the New Zealand national team ever since.
So is that going to be something you say going forward until they just ask you not to come back, that you're going to keep doing?
Yeah, pretty much. Obviously, like, my job here with Louisville comes first, but where there's opportunistic windows for certain events, I'll try to stay involved, and still from a distance, I'm still helping and stuff. That coaching for New Zealand means the world to me.
So how did you end up getting the coaching job, the head coaching job there? Let's see if I can say this correctly. The Taranaki Mountaineers, is that right?
Yeah, Taranaki. Pretty close.
Taranaki. And not only that, but you won the Coach of the Year in your first first big head coaching job.
Yeah, I mean, I did my 2 years in Reno, awesome experience, and just kind of was like, all right, the cup is filled up. I want to empty it out. Like, I want to empty it out from the standpoint of getting to go run my own program and challenge myself in that regards. And just like the growth that comes from head coaching is massive. Doesn't matter where in the world or what level you're doing it. There's just different types of decisions, and it's a different feel. So I kind of just made a decision to step away from the job in Reno and go take a chance head coaching back in the New Zealand League. And it was awesome. I mean, we joined a team that was, I think, the lowest budget team in the league at the time, and had been, I think, the year before, maybe, I think it had won 2 games in 2 years.
How many games did they play in a season?
About 18, 20.
Whoa.
It had been a rough go. And again, like, a lot of that comes down to budget. Just like, money talks, and if you can't get certain players, it's going to be tough. And so I think a big part of our success was because of, like, me being with the national team and the reputation I built with player development. I was able to get a couple guys to come there that maybe hadn't previously. So I credit those guys more than anything for our success. But no, it was a great experience. I learned a lot from doing things right, learned a lot from doing things wrong. But ultimately, yeah, good experience, and awesome head coaching experience. Good growth for me.
So in the NBL, is it more like the NBA as far as salary cap, or is it more like Major League Baseball where there really isn't a salary cap, but if you go over a certain number, you have to pay a luxury tax, or is that not even a thing?
So this was the New Zealand league, which is different than the NBL. This is basically the NZBL. So it's about, depending on which teams are playing in it year to year, there's anywhere between like 8 to 10 teams every year in the New Zealand Basketball League, all from New Zealand. This is separate from the NBL, which has, again, depending on the amount of teams playing in it year to year, about 8 to 10 teams. One of those is the New Zealand Breakers. The rest are all Australian based. So the New Zealand League is a lower level league that's about a 3 to 4 month league that goes generally from March to late June range. And they've just recently instated a salary cap, but previously there was not one. So it was just just kind of naturally some teams are going to have more than others, which I think is healthy and fine. That just is what it is.
So when you left to come back, was that a pretty tough decision to make, because you had just won Coach of the Year, you had got some guys to come there that maybe wouldn't come, and then you came back to coach for the Santa Cruz Warriors and be an assistant again?
Right. Yeah, definitely a tough decision, because it's exciting to have a chance to build something. And I'm at home in New Zealand, just like in a culture that I love, with family around and stuff, and really close. My childhood friend that I played with the year I came back from Santa Barbara High to New Zealand, a school called Kelston College. He was the starting point guard for our team on that pro team in Taranaki. He ended up it was really cool. And then I brought over Marcus Johnson, who had been one of the players in that 2012 pre-draft with Klay Thompson, as one of my imports. So it was like, it was a really cool vibe of the group. So no, it was tough to leave, but ultimately for me, I wanted to keep my mind on being able to grow my career and stuff over here, just because sadly you're just not going to make the money in New Zealand to be able to really build a full-time career coaching wise, certainly not at that time. And
how many imports were you allowed to have on your NZBL teams?
2.
Just 2. Okay, so that's like most Euro leagues and everything as well then.
Yeah. It depends on, EuroLeague, there's all sorts of different rules depending on the country that changes. But yeah, just two in the New Zealand league. So, yeah.
So when you came back, you spent time with the Santa Cruz Warriors, the Westchester Knicks, then eventually the New York Knicks, as a video coordinator. Like, just those 3 jobs, or actually, let's go all the way back to what's the biggest thing that you feel like coming into Louisville that you've, taken from those jobs?
Man, a breadth of experience. Coaching in the G League might be it's a great league to coach in. It might also be one of the most challenging leagues to coach in, because you're talking about a league where everyone goes to leave. Nobody goes to the G League to try to stay there and stick in there and be the most games ever played player in the G League, right? Maybe a little bit more now, because there's a little bit more money in it than there was then that players can make. But it's at the root of it is an individual mindset of like, I have to find my way out of this, in a sense. So it asks a lot of your staff to try to get your players moving in the same direction for the team, while still making them feel that you have their individual interests in mind. Yeah. And so then there's some similarities there to that I've drawn looking at the college game, in terms of that, of like, all these guys are trying to move on to get to the point where they can make money in their careers and make this a professional career. So there's some similarities there that I think I learned from that. And then the G League, you're constantly dealing with different personnel. I think my second year in the G League, on the season, I think we went through 33 different players in one season on a 12-man roster, on a 13-man roster. So it's like, you constantly have to adapt, adjust to your group at the same time, while respecting if it is an NBA team that wants you to run their system, while still trying to have the outlines of their system in place if they send down one of their guys. So there's any amount of challenges that make you have to adapt and adjust as a coach, that I think is a great strength of that league. And you have to wear every hat. There's smaller staffs. Yeah. So like, you got to do player development, you got to do defense, you got to do offense, you got to scout, you got to be able to make sure you're managing gym hours and gym time, and you're driving the van, and any amount of things. So like, there's there's so many aspects to that. With the Knicks, which was player development and video, I did kind of played both roles. And so I did the same stuff that I did with Sacramento there at the Knicks in terms of being full-time, working the guys out all hours of the day. And then also had video responsibilities in terms of like putting together individual personnel clips for our upcoming opponents and different things there, and just getting calls from other team sets and stuff. So again, anytime you go through a full NBA season, it's a great experience to learn different teams around the league, different actions, learn how players operate at that level on your own team and on other teams. So getting to see organizational structure, for better or worse, like how a culture is built or how it doesn't work. So I think there's a lot of learning there.
So as a video coordinator, because this is something that I've always wondered as far as on a professional level, do you guys just, because every NBA team, doesn't matter where they're at, they all have their own networks. So do you just take the broadcast from that and do that? Or do you actually go up there, film your own videos, or do you film certain parts, or as far as a video coordinator goes, do you go to the film that you just took from that program and then break it down yourself and tell the coaches what you saw?
So we had a couple other video guys on staff. For me, I was behind the bench during games. I would have an iPad, but the game was going directly into the iPad live. And so I could flag anything throughout the course of the game that I could show to players on the bench to be able to see stuff or show stuff to some of the assistant coaches on the bench if there was a certain play, certain action we needed to see. And then I could create a halftime edit from the back of the bench that we could show back in the locker room at halftime to be able to make adjustments or any amount of things. Meanwhile, we had another video guy who was sitting back in the locker room who was live coding the game. And so he's getting his feed directly from the TV feed, basically. And he's coding up, obviously, like offensive, defensive possessions, cut up, and any amount of other things that our coach is asking for in terms of organizing it by our plays, by our defensive coverages. And so by the time the game's done, within 10 minutes, it's loaded, put on each coach's computer so that they all have it. They can take it home and watch it possession by possession or set by set or any amount of different ways.
That's so insane to think about, because now I think of the NFL guys where, they have the Windows pads or whatever, the iPads or whatever, and they're showing the guys the stuff on the sideline. I didn't realize that the NBA was pretty much the same way.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. It's cool how that technology is help the game and stuff in that regard.
So were there certain things that they pointed out, all right, this is kind of the stuff that we want, or was it just I've been around this coach enough to know, okay, this is the kind of stuff he's looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it was David Fizdale that year, so he was bringing a lot of stuff from Miami. Fizz is great, he had his certain stuff that he wanted to look for. Obviously, the certain stuff within our system that's important that he wants to make sure he sees every game. And different coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches are going to watch the game in different ways as they review it. Everyone has kind of their own way to do it, and sometimes the game will tell you how you want to watch it, in a sense of how you remember it. So sometimes it's a game where I just want to watch all our offensive possessions in a row and then all our defensive possessions in a row, potentially. Sometimes, hey, there was a segment there from 7 minutes in the third quarter to 3 minutes in the third quarter. We got the doors blown off. Let me just watch that in full and without it being clipped up, and just understand what happened in that period and get a theme and an understanding of that. Sometimes it's we walked away from that game with 22 turnovers, and let me just watch the 22 turnovers. That's what the critical thing was in that game. There's any amount of reasons of kind of how you'll watch film. And so different head coaches will have their things that they like. Different assistants will have their things that they like.
So after you left there, you end up back with Melbourne United, or back in Melbourne with the Melbourne United team, correct?
Yep. So that was with Dean Bickerman, who had been the assistant coach with the New Zealand Breakers when I was 18, and then had been the head coach with the Breakers for a period, all those years that I was going back and helping out with the team. And so me and Dino had a really close relationship. He was the head coach. Paul Hanare, who is our New Zealand national team head coach, was an assistant. And so it was an opportunity to go coach in a really high level league in the Australian League, in a great role as an assistant coach with family, with people that you fully trust and believe in. You have an opportunity to do that in coaching, which you don't always get. It's a really special opportunity. So that was a cool chance.
So this is the league that Melo Ball and RJ Hampton played in, correct? Was this the year that they were
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
What was it like coaching against those guys? Like, could you already tell at that point, like, what level those guys were going to be at?
LaMelo sat out. But LaMelo, we didn't play LaMelo until later in the season. I think the first game he was hurt, and then by the time we played them the second time, he had shut it down, basically. So we never got to play against LaMelo. Watched any amount of film with him and saw how talented he was and stuff. Him and RJ were in two very different situations. LaMelo was on a team that ended up being bottom of the league and had a group of young players and stuff, and they were growing together a bit. So he had a much longer leash because of their kind of where their expectations were as a team that year to be able to do his thing. Granted, that's kind of some guys are going to find a way to create that leash no matter what, and I think that's who LaMelo is. He's going to be a guy that plays free and confident. It doesn't matter what situation you put him into. He's going to find a way to be that guy, and so you could see that right away from day one and how he played the game and just some of his instincts. And more than anything, like the thing that stood out to me when scouts would ask me about it when I was over there, it was like he is gifted as a passer. There's guys who pass because they want to and they and they really focus on it, or they're just not very good scorers. So it's like it's a selfish, unselfish way of contributing to the game. But like with him, he had a gift for it in a similar way that Jokic has a gift for it, or Doncic has a gift for it, or LeBron has a gift for it. Like it is a natural instinctual feel for it. It's really impressive. And so you could see that right away. RJ, he was on a team that had high expectations of winning, and a coach who's a really, really intelligent, sharp coach from Europe that is pretty controlling in terms of like, they're going to execute their sets in the half court at a really high level. And there was a lot more growing pains in him having to fit in with that group. And I don't know if that was a perfect fit in terms of his style and what he needed to be able to showcase and stuff to be able to help him be the best that year. And so his minutes kind of fluctuated. He wasn't as good. Ultimately, he had a really good span versus us one game. Like we were up 20 and they kind of just let him go, and they didn't call too many sets and just played in transition. And it was like, whoa, he's got some juice. But a lot of the year you couldn't see it.
So when an Americanized player comes over to the NBL, is there like do they have a draft, or is it just like I'm pretty much meeting with all the teams and whatever team I decide to go to, as long as they have a spot for me, that's where I'm going?
So there's imports and there's next stars. The imports you just choose. You turn around and any amount of players that you can reach out to that are just professional players that you're going to reach out to, offer a contract and negotiate with their agent and try to get them to come and be your import, right? So we had be a familiar name like we had that year, Melo Trimble, who's from Maryland, right? And another player named Sean Long, another player named Casey Prather from Florida.
Casey, okay, I remember. I don't remember the second one, but I remember the other two.
Yeah, so there's any amount of guys that those are just imports you're going to get. But then separately, in the last 2 years, they put in the next star rule, which is basically each team has one next star spot. And these are guys that I forget the exact definition of it, but it's young guys that are still eligible for the NBA draft that can come over. So they're in that LaMelo Ball, RJ Hampton range, and the league will pay their contract. And they'll get a buyout basically when they leave that contract to the NBA. And so that's what's opened up, being able to get a LaMelo, being able to get an RJ and some of the different players that have gone over.
I wondered why guys were choosing that league, and now you telling me that makes total sense on why guys are choosing that league, because now, okay, most other leagues you have to get, like you said, the import. Now it's like, hey, I can go here, play for a year, they'll pay me a buyout, and then I can go get drafted.
Yeah, so it's a way for those young guys, obviously, to make money, get compensated, be able to play until they're eligible for the NBA draft, since they can't go straight from high school, right? And then be able to, the team doesn't have a massive amount of risk where they're typically man, if we're gonna get an import, we need him to be a veteran guy that we can trust right away. No, those are for the import spots, but then they can also go get a next star who could turn around and be great. I mean, like Josh Giddey who just got drafted.
Yeah.
He was a net star in that league this year and ended up being the starting point for Adelaide.
So how did you get in contact with Coach Mack in the University of Louisville?
Brandon, cut out for a moment there.
All right, sorry. How did you get in contact with Coach Mack? Did he just? I mean, I guess he got your number from someone who gave you a call, or what? Was there a relationship already there?
Yeah, that was through Cahill Fennell. We had been connected through a mutual friend, maybe in like June of 2020 or so, and just started just as like mutual lovers of the game of basketball. I just started connecting maybe once a month, just talking hoop. I was back in Santa Barbara running pre-draft workouts at the time and off-season workouts kind of during COVID times. And he was out here dealing with any amount of stuff throughout the season with Louisville. And we just connect once a month, talk basketball and everything. And then, then the changes happened with the staff and there were some spots open. And Coach Fennell reached out to me and just said like, hey, would you have any interest in this and stuff? And kind of got my name in the mix and got connected with Coach Mack and things went from there.
Was it something that was pretty difficult for you to make that decision on because you've been in the pro game mostly and, maybe that's where your heart is, or was it just something like, okay, I mean, first, did you know a lot about the University of Louisville? I'm guessing you did from the pro game, but
I did. I'd always followed college basketball and knew that Louisville was one of the top programs in the country when it comes to that and the history and the tradition that comes with this school. I think from 11 years old, I've been heavily attached to, I'm going to be an NBA head coach. And at 11 was confident or arrogant or whatever enough to be able to say, I'm going to be an NBA head coach by the time I'm 30. And you get into the business and you learn more and you grow up and mature and you understand life doesn't work like that. But I've had any amount of experiences that have been great in the NBA and in the G League and pursuing that and stuff, which is ultimately, though along the way, shifted kind of my goal and what I'm attached to being, no, I just want to coach at a high level with great people in a great organization. That's what I'm attached to. Like, and whether that's in the NBA, in Europe, in college, back in New Zealand, like, long as I can make a good living doing it, that's what brings me joy and fulfillment and purpose in this job and stuff. And so I'd say that's been a shift for me in the last 4 or 5 years. And so this opportunity coming along with a school at the level of the University of Louisville, which is really an MBA program in college in terms of the facilities and the resources it supported, was a thing that I was really interested in right off the bat.
So looking back on the last season for the University of Louisville, it wasn't the pace and the pace of play in the offense really wasn't where the fans were accustomed from the past with Coach Pitino or even Coach Crum and all that stuff. And hearing Coach Mack at the end of the season talk about how he had wanted to play as well, it obviously wasn't where he wanted to be. Is this one of the main reasons you were brought in to help with the coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think like first you look at last season, again, the COVID year, amidst all the different things that they dealt with, from injuries to COVID breaks and stuff. So like I honestly feel like I've probably spent more time looking into the season before than I did into last season at times. Like I looked into last season to learn the individual players, but I think there's like Coach Mack didn't want to be this second slowest team in the ACC, and ultimately that wasn't a function of them saying, "Hey, pump the brakes." That was a function of guys get hurt, you play a smaller rotation, and we're only human. Guys only got so much gas in their tanks, and they got to slow down. And you got Carlik Jones and David Johnson playing as many minutes as they did, and that's going to impact pace. And that's the exciting thing about the group we got this year with the depth we have is I think it's a roster and a depth that will allow us to be able to play at a higher pace. That's exciting. But no, once me and Coach Matt got connected and were able to talk the game with each other, just kind of got excited, having a great hoop conversation, being able to bounce ideas back and forth off of each other, and it kind of went from there.
What specific things have you brought to practice as far as the transition into the new offensive pace and like other things that Coach Mack has spoken about?
I mean, I think a big piece that we're trying to do is really get our players to understand, like, shifting from what to run to how to play. and learning how to play conceptually, learning how to play without having to have a set call, but recognize spacing on the floor and understanding the players you have on the floor that you're playing with, and how to get to different actions from there without a call having to be made, but understanding, recognizing common spacings and having a few options from those common spacings that we can play out of. And then from there, being able to recognize, now, how is a defense defending this action? What's the coverage? Are they trapping this ball screen? Are they switching this ball screen? Are they going under? Are they playing in a deep drop? And having 5 guys tuned in to that moment and that recognition, and then having an appropriate reaction to that. And so like we're really trying to make a shift in their understanding of how to play the game instinctually as a group on the fly, and certainly at pace.
Wow. That's me being a basketball junkie. That's like that's I love hearing that stuff. Like like I could sit here and talk to you about that type of stuff for days, like just hearing that type of stuff and everything. So you've coached under a lot of guys, you coached with a lot of guys. Who would you say you pulled the most from, or are you going to take the easy answer and say, well, I've pulled some from everybody?
It's not the easy answer. It's the true answer, though.
Yeah.
To be honest, you know what I mean? Really, but like, I mean, again, some of the influences that I got to have on, like in New Zealand and in Australia, I think were huge. Like being exposed to the New Zealand Breakers with Andre Lamanas, Dean Vickerman, Judd Flavel early on that first year. Like that first year as a coaching intern was a massive influence. Being able to work with Paul Hanare and Pero Cameron with the national team, 2 guys that played for really good New Zealand national team head coaches before that, that were creative on the world level, was huge. Having Keith Smart, like a massive influence for me in my career. But like beyond that, I think there's a bigger influence of like any amount of coaches that I've been watching and studying on film for years, that I've never even gotten to meet, I mean, or never talked to, or have visited a couple practices of. And so that's Zelko Obradovic with Fenerbahce. That's David Blatt with Maccabi Tel Aviv when he was there. That's Dimitris Itudis with CSKA Moscow. Any amount of coaches over there that like are just really, really sharp. And same at the NBA level, from a Spoelstra to a Quinn Snyder to a Kenny Atkinson. Like, you study the game, you learn. So it's the easy answer, but it's the true answer. And there's a lot of influences there.
Nice. So transitioning into being a college assistant coach, what do you say? I have 2 parts for you. So I'll just ask what do you think is the toughest part for the players to transition into what you're trying to bring into the system?
Being tuned in to every moment of every possession, recognizing that, like, not turning my mind on when the ball's in my hands, not turning my mind on just when I'm like the direct person involved in the action as the screener, but when I'm spaced off the ball at the wing or at the corner, actively having to read the game then. Like it's important that our guy off the ball at the wing knows what the ball screen coverage is just as much as the ball handler and the screener. No different than the corner guy, no different than the other corner guy. Like just when our bigs are running the floor, it's important that they have recognition of, is there corner empty, corner filled? So just like in every single moment of the game, offense and defense, their recognition and like just keeping that switch on, like keep not letting their brain turn off in that regards and going on autopilot all of a sudden. There's so many moments in the game to read, to take advantage of, and just trying to get them to that stage. And it really just starts with an education of what it is they're reading, right?
So what about for you? What's been the toughest transition for you as far as coming to college?
I think learning, number one, probably the hours limitation is like learning those different rules in that regards, like just any amount of rules that I've had to learn, which are in place. So the recruiting rules, the hours rules, and any amount of things there that are just different from being in a professional environment that you're not thinking of. And certainly it's been a really cool connect the dots moment for me, because I've again coached in the NBA, in the G League, at the run pre-draft stuff. So I always get guys coming from college, and I'm part of that onboarding process for them to the NBA, internationally, Europe, New Zealand, but never touch college. So it's kind of connects the circle from me of understanding everything. So being able to be out on the AAU circuit this summer on the recruiting trail and stuff, and watching those games and how those games are played and style of play, like it connects a lot of dots, and me understanding why things happen, or why a player looks like they do when I get them in pre-draft, and the amount of things there.
So you mentioning that this is something that was very big for me. So with the Olympics just ending, and you see some of the best players in the world coming from the U.S. national team, you have guys like Lillard and guys like that struggling at the beginning of the Olympics because of the style of play. Given your experience in multiple countries of basketball, what would you say are the biggest differences as far as the game goes between the Americanized game and, Euro and even NBL?
I think number one, I think for all the talk of like there's more ball movement, or there's more like a higher, like there's more ball movement, more tactics and stuff in the international game. I really think you have to just look at the fact that the rules are different and the court lines are different, and that is a huge part of why all that is the case. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden you don't have defensive 3 seconds in the key, so guys can sit in there longer. Refs allow more contact and don't call fouls as quickly. You're allowed to arm bar in certain situations on the perimeter and not have to just completely play hands off. So it's far harder to beat a guy just off the bounce one-on-one, not to mention that the floor is tighter. And so there's more guys in gaps, kind of like there is in college in that regard, less so than the NBA. So I think a huge part is just a function of the rules. So it's easier. There's more space, at least, to ISO at the NBA level, and to be able to make a play one-on-one there than there is at the international level, at the FIBA level. No different than in college also. So I think that's the biggest part. And like you saw the players have to adjust to that as the tournament went on, and then realizing like, man, I'm not getting a foul call for that like I normally do. Or that gap's not open like it normally is. Like by the time I pound this ball 3-4 times, like that defense is loaded up and I got to get off it. I'm not going to be able to make a play in that space that's normally there. And we saw that when we played with versus Giannis with the New Zealand national team versus Greece. Like we made a big point as a staff saying like, look guys, for as an amazing player as he is, he's not the same person in this game as the game that you watch him playing in the NBA. It's a different game here, and you guys got to understand that. We're going to take these gaps away from him, and he's not going to have the same impact. He's not going to be the monster that he is in the NBA. He was still a beast. He's still tough. He gave us a clean 20, but he wasn't out there giving us 35 and impossible to stop. You know what I mean? Like so that the way the court space, the way the rules are, makes it very different. And so I think that's what causes a lot of the tactical differences and style of play differences.
So now off of that, what is something that you would like to see taught more or maybe implemented in the American game and then vice versa?
Exactly what I just said from a standpoint of like what our players are learning to understand better is just like their awareness in every moment of the game. And I think the easiest one to speak to that you see a big difference of from the US game to the European game or the international game is the attention to attacking coverages as a 5-man unit. Like when we play against this pick and roll coverage, it's this reaction as a group. When we play against this coverage, it's this reaction as a group. And there's so much more like, for instance, you play a team that plays an aggressive coverage, a hard show in the NBA. For the most part, it's like, all right, Russell Westbrook, just find your way to split that. Find your way to run around that hard show. And a lot of times they're talented enough to because of their supreme athleticism.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the rest of us don't get to have that luxury. And so you got to beat that aggressive coverage as a 5-man group with specific shifts and angles of roll and any amount of things and stuff. So I think that's a huge thing I'd love to hear more that I think would only help the game is that attention to detail on that stuff.
And what about vice versa? Like, what would you like to see maybe the international game pick up?
Vice versa, there's skill set stuff in terms of like some of the one-on-one skill sets and ball handling skill sets and finishing skill sets of players here and how that's drilled is really impressive. And again, I think there's a balance there of like sometimes a supreme skill set can be the same thing that stops you from leaning into needing your team to achieve something, because sometimes your skill set can be so good that it can help you achieve something on your own without your team, which is a strength that can become a weakness in certain
Yeah.
moments. So it's a balance that goes both ways. But I mean, like there's a free flowingness to certain teams in the NBA that I think there's some teams in the NBA that have found a really nice balance between the like embracing of really high level tactics while also accommodating to a free flowing game that like accommodates high level skill sets.
I feel like Memphis is kind of going that way with Ja and some of those guys there, but they're still kind of younger, working towards the core of a defensive stopper as well.
Taylor Jenkins is a hell of a coach. He's done a really good job there. I agree.
So this is something I want to ask because you've done certain interviews with I've seen you or heard you with Marcus Maben and Jeff Greer and other people. If you had to sell yourself to the fan base as far as what you bring to the table and what you want to accomplish as yourself, what would you say?
I'm still growing as a salesman. I would just say, man, I love the game. I'm going to be here committed to our guys day in and day out. And I'm someone who has a growth mindset. So I'm constantly wired to adapt and adjust and grab new ideas and never settle for something that may have had success, but assume that it will continue to. We're going to constantly look for what's next. Where's the game growing? What direction is it growing in? How can we be ahead of that curve?
So speaking on that, and then speaking on what you've said as far as your 11-year-old self saying that you're going to be an NBA head coach, is college? Do you think college head coaching could be the ultimate goal, or is the NBA head coaching job still the ultimate goal for you?
No, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm completely here with where my feet are right now as a Louisville Cardinal, as an assistant coach here, and very committed to just making this as great of a situation as possible for our team, for our program, for our players, for our staff. And so there's really not another thought in my mind beyond that.
That's awesome. So when I met you, man, you were going to get some ice cream. What do you think of the city so far? That's something, I like asking people that move in. What do you think of the city so far?
The city's cool. I'm learning it. I was on the recruiting trail all July, so I really didn't get to see much of it. And I've been at the facility so much. So only in the last couple of weeks have I really been able to get out and about a bit. So no, I'm enjoying finding new food spots. New food recommendations are always welcome. That's my main thing. That's going to have me get out, is to go find a new food spot. But it's cool. It's got a cool personality to it. I still got a lot more to explore of it.
You gotten to try any of those places I sent you yet?
Some. What were the main ones you recommended?
So
you recommended like Hammerheads.
Yeah, Hammerheads.
It.
Hammerheads it opens up after 5, so you have to go over there. And I promise you, when you get there, it's going to look like someone's house, and you're going to be like, "This is the place that he sent me to." But I promise you, go there. Steak and Bourbon is another one. Is a fantastic place.
That's high level.
Yeah. Red Top is like gourmet hot dogs. Fantastic. I mean, we're known as one of the best food cities in anywhere. Like, there's just so many places that are around here that you could literally throw a rock and hit a good restaurant.
Awesome.
So we're about to do the rapid fire questions. Before that, I got to read this. So my rapid fire questions are sponsored by Mike and Cheese. It's the best mac and cheese in town. I'll have to get you the number for this. It's one of my best friends. Does fantastic mac and cheese. Not only that, I have my own mac and cheese with him. So they do free delivery to Louisville and Southern Indiana. It's a $15 minimum. You can call them at 502-548-6845 and make sure you try the Beef's Beef Pizza Mac. I made my own mac and cheese with them. And I just shot him the idea of making a pizza mac and cheese, and he put it together in a day and said, "Come over and try it." And I was like, yeah, it's got pepperoni and sausage in it with some mozzarella and American cheese. It's so good.
I'm a big mac and cheese fan. Send me the link after we're done.
Absolutely. I'll get you his direct number so you can get some delivered to you.
Cool.
All right. So you're familiar with rapid fire questions. I ask you, say the first thing comes to mind.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite pregame meal as a coach?
Raspberries, because that was as a player, but as a coach, man, I'll do a lot of things. Let's just say some pasta.
Pizza or tacos?
Depends on the city. Pizza, New York. Tacos, California. I haven't figured out here yet.
Wings or burgers?
Burgers.
All right. So if you are eating wings, though, do you like drums or do you like flats?
Not a big wings fan.
Oh wow, this one right here is a big one, and this is going to decide whether we're friends or not. So you answered this one correctly. French fries or tater tots?
French fries.
All right, we're good. We're good to go then. We're good to go because there's some crazy people out there that think tater tots are better than French fries.
Yeah.
I'll eat tater tots, but no, they're not better than French fries. All right, favorite movie?
Favorite movie, White Man Can't Jump or Love Actually. Big rom-com fan.
All right. Biggest fear?
Ooh, biggest fear. Not a big fan of like spiders or gators or crocodiles.
You
All
grew up
those.
in New Zealand. Don't they have a lot of that stuff out there?
Oh, the big difference between New Zealand and Australia.
They still have a lot of animals.
Australia has everything that can kill you, and New Zealand has nothing that can kill you. No deadly anything. No
Really?
gators, no crocodiles, no poisonous spiders, no snakes. It's a paradise out there.
You're making me want to move there. All right. Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Again, depends which city. I got my different spots, but I'm gonna go salted caramel chip from McConnell's in Santa Barbara.
All right. So far since you've been here, what's your favorite restaurant in the city of Louisville?
La Bodeguita de Mima, Cuban spot, big yellow spot in Nulu, big yellow house in Nulu, elite.
Favorite basketball player ever?
We're gonna go one from each country.
Let's take that.
Harold Cameron from New Zealand, Tracy McGrady from the U.S., and Dimitris Diamantidis from Europe.
Nice. Who's your favorite athlete ever?
Go with Sir Edmund Hillary. He climbed Mount Everest, Kiwi. That's pretty athletic. I think that's pretty athletic.
Yeah. All right. Who's the best player you ever faced in the NBL, the G League, and in the NBA?
So one from each?
Yeah.
NBL. Shoot. Man. You know, with New Zealand League, Torrey Craig was in the league that year. Who then went on to play with the Denver Nuggets and has made a career there. He was a beast to coach in the New Zealand League the year I was head coaching there. So I'll say him. I mean, LaMelo Ball's going to go on to be one heck of a player. So probably him also in the Australian League. Bryce Cotton actually is an undercover name there. Bryce Cotton.
Why do I know that name?
Played at Providence, I think, maybe.
Okay.
He's a legend in that league. Really tough to guard. Then we said NBA.
NBA and G League.
Jokic is the most amazing player I've ever witnessed live. He had 10 assists in the first quarter versus us with the Knicks. That's partly because he's amazing and partly because we were bad at defense. But he's unbelievable. Like, he's unreal. So I'll say Jokic. He was awesome. And then G League, man, a lot of good guys that have been in that league. I'm actually going to say a guy that was. I'm trying to think of who's coming to mind there. Trey Burke was on our team, but I felt he was the best player in the G League in the time that I was there. He was dominant. Yeah,
we know a lot about that guy. He was on that 2013 Michigan team that Louisville beat in the championship. So
that's right.
Yeah. Last question: best player you've ever coached or trained, or coached and trained?
I had 2 workouts with Giannis, so that's he's probably the best. But in terms of like actually really spending time with them, significant time with them, probably Klay Thompson.
And what about a player you coached?
Player I've coached with a team. Let's go with, probably Sacramento. DeMarcus Cousins is the highest talented player.
Yeah. I mean, there was points in his career where he was the best center in the NBA. And me being a big Louisville fan, people are going to shun on me for saying that, but he was the best center in the NBA there for a good 2 or 3 year span. So, yeah, so I can't really disagree with you saying that that's the best player that you coached, because that dude had phenomenal talent, even if his attitude wasn't always there where people wanted it to be.
Yeah, he was good. I really want to say, shout out my New Zealand national team guys, Corey Webster and Isaac Fotu and all that group, but I think DeMarcus gets the edge probably.
Well, Ross, man, I appreciate you taking time out for me. This is it's a big thing for me because I'm a basketball junkie. So getting to hear you talk about certain things of where you've been and how the game translates as far as coming from there to here and you know, going all over, man. It's fantastic to hear.
Appreciate it. It's fun. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it again.
Cool. All right. Have a good one.